So this interview hasn't even started yet, and I already know that it's going to be amazing because I'm talking with a personal friend of mine today, and we're probably going to go off track a little bit. So we'll try to rein it in. And I also feel like I should invite everybody to grab a glass of like beer or wine and join us because this is going to be such a laid back conversation all about not letting your circumstances define you in life and business. So our guest today is going to be talking about she, based on traditional standards, shouldn't have been successful because she came from a pretty tough life growing up as a mom with a mom who was an addict. She was evicted from a couple of different homes over the years, but she overcame the odds and reached multiple six figures in her business. And in her business, she is a business coach and the owner of a social media management agency. She always keeps it real over on Instagram. So you can find her there at The Real Coach Nina. So please welcome Nina Hirt to the podcast. Nina, so glad that you are here.
I feel like we should have rolled out a red carpet.
I know.
It's so fun.
Yay. So glad that you're here. So before we dive into your story and all of that, do you just want to explain a little bit about, well, actually, you know what? Let's just dive in. Like, let's talk about like all the way back to your childhood. Like, let's talk about that and then kind of paint the picture to what got you to here today. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
Perfect.
So interestingly enough, like you said, I come from a single mom household, and I feel like so many people can relate to that, right? Single mom, actually growing up, like you said, I mean, my mom was an addict. She was very depressed. So we see a lot of like sadness, sorrow. And I think one of the things that I learned very early on is like watching her get evicted from every house. It was like, this is what I don't want. Like that was the only thing I knew as a kid is like what I didn't want, because watching her like go out, sell prescription drugs just to make sure that we had rent and we had food on the table and a house over our head, like all of those things that you see time and time again. It was like, what can I do to make sure that I don't go down that path? Like, what can I do to make sure that that's not what I would have to do to support my family one day? And I think one of the biggest things that for me was just like, this is kind of where I got my entrepreneurial like spirit and grit from, because I saw her hustling, but I'm like, I'm not doing it in that way, right? Like I'm gonna do it in a way that's legal. But it was really interesting to like kind of watch that. And I had a good role model with my grandparents. I think that's kind of what saved me. But at the end of the day, it was like just watching someone do anything they could to make it work. And for me, that was like, it was really important, because I think sometimes we forget that, especially now, like in business, is like you literally sometimes have to do what you have to do to make it work. And like as it progressed and as I grew up, one of the biggest things that people told me was like, to be successful, go to school, right? Go get good grades, go to school, go to college, get your degree, climb the corporate ladder, you'll make six figures, you'll marry a man, lol, and things will be great, right? And I was like, okay, cool. Like, let me follow that traditional path, because that's what success was. Like, that's what happiness was. But I did those things. I just didn't marry a man, but I checked the boxes of going to school, going to grad school, getting that master's degree. And I was like, this is fun. This is like $100,000 debt plaque right on my wall. Like, that was great. But at the end of it, I ended up getting that corporate job, and it just wasn't fulfilling. So I would sit in that job every day, and there was nothing wrong with my boss. There's nothing wrong with the job. It just was not fulfilling. So it checked all the boxes, and like all the things that said I would be successful and all the things that said I would make me money. But at the end of the day, I would sit there and I'd be like, damn, this is just like not where it's at. Like, I'm coming in here, I go to the gym, go to work, go home, eat dinner, go to bed. And it would be on repeat. And I'm like, this, like, I have so much more to offer the world than that I'm like, this is so messed up that I'm like just doing this every day. Right. So that was why and how I ended up starting a fitness coaching business back a couple years back. And that, that was fun. It was really cool to see the transformations. But then I was like, I have a master's in business, and I've like really been excelling and even just helping my friends like build their business. So that was why ended up switching over to business coaching. And from there, just being able to grow that business. And honestly, I was so resistant to like growing it based on like relationships, because what I was really scared of like people rejecting me and people not wanting to, not necessarily not want to work with me, but like rejecting me in the DMs and like ghosting me and things like that. And I was like, I have no idea why I felt that way. But when I actually leaned into it and just started doing it and realizing that it doesn't matter, like when they tell you no, or if something's not for them, it doesn't really mean anything about me. So I just like started mastering it. Like, let me start mastering the DMs. And that's how my organic engagement agency was born, is because I really enjoyed that piece of it. And that was what I saw a lot of sales from. So that was how I ended up helping other coaches do the same. But back on my stuff about being able to do whatever you wanted and just finding that hustle. And like when I quit my 9 to 5, that was like, it took me back to childhood, being like, you know what? It doesn't matter what it's going to take. I'm going to make sure that I do this. If I have to connect with 8 people, or if I have to network, or if I have to go to events, or whatever the hell it may be, it's going to be on my terms, right? It wasn't going to be on anyone else's. So that's kind of how I got to where I got to today.
So interesting to hear like the correlation between your mom, who was literally selling drugs, to you as an entrepreneur, but that that grit mentality. I mean, it's true. I personally have never thought about it that way before, but yeah. So I don't know if you mind sharing, but how are things with your mom now? Is everything,
Yeah, they're
is it
good.
better?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's better now, and they're good. And we have a really good relationship. We never had a bad relationship. We just had a difference in opinion, right? Like, I wouldn't go down that path, and like, you may be doing that thing for what you need to do to survive. But now it's like, for me, what I have built, and she is very proud of that. She's really excited that her child didn't go down that path, and her child can do this. And now it's more like, for me, it's not like rewarding the shit behavior. It's like, I just like to be able to take her and do things for her, because she did things for me that maybe I may not understand, right? To put Christmas presents under that tree, she literally did what she had to do to do that, right? Whether I agree with it or not. But it's like, now is my season of just being able to pay her back in a way that would represent, I guess, my appreciation of, like, and so it's more than material, right? It's my appreciation of whatever she had to do and things she had to sacrifice to give me at least a roof over my head and food on the table.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. One thing that you did mention before was like this worthiness, like this feeling of, I don't even know if it was worthiness, but like this feeling of not feeling good enough when you would have conversations with people, or like when you started your business. And obviously, as you know, like relationships are a huge part of growing a business. So that's kind of necessary, especially in the online space when you don't see people face to face, like it's built off of a relationship. So, um, I would love to know, like, is there anything that you did to help overcome those issues that you can share with other people? Or was it just like, I'm just gonna get over it, and you just kind of like decided one day?
But yeah, I think it was kind of a mix of both, because when you think about it, like, as a whole, like, what's going to make his business successful? And I saw time and time again, when I wasn't building relationships, I wasn't even like talking to people in the DMs. I'm like, why the hell? Like, I'm special too, like everyone else. Like, I'm a good coach. I don't get it. And what was happening was, I was realizing that everyone that was successful was out there doing those things, like building those relationships. And I'm like, okay, so I could either shit or get off the pot, basically. Like, I'm going to either do these things and build these relationships and not look at it as, like, I didn't look at it as transactional or sales. Like, I just want to build relationships to build relationships. And ideally, I mean, back in the beginning, it was, let's just start as many conversations as like genuine as possible. And I'll have conversation with people and they'll just buy from me. Obviously, we know it's not how it works, right? But it was just like overcoming that fear of getting ghosted. And I think that kind of went back to expectations. One of the biggest things, and this is something I learned, like, also from my childhood, is like, when you release all the expectations, so many things happen for you. It's like, when I let go of that and thought, you know what, I'm just gonna have conversation. I have zero expectations if any of these people will be my clients. Like, let's just see if we vibe, right? And of course, like, later on, I realized it has to come back down to like having a good product, building authority, and all of that, all the extras that, strategic extras. But at the core of it, it was like, wow, if I don't do this, what's the alternative, right? Like, the alternative is me going to a 9 to 5, which I hate. So you might as well do it, have these conversations, and like, so your ego gets hurt if someone tells you no, or so you feel like not worthy for a second. I think that happens to a lot of people in the beginning, is they put their worth in it, and it doesn't mean anything. Like, I started to recognize It has nothing to do with me. It's nothing to do with my program. It's maybe someone's not ready, or maybe someone got busy, or they're just like, they don't want to be sold to. I mean, I don't know. There's a million reasons why people either don't answer you, or you're having a conversation with them and they just decide they don't want this program. Or maybe they told you they did and then they didn't. Like, it just is what it is. And I think at the end of the day, when you become so unattached to whatever happens and you just genuinely care about helping them, like, it changes everything for you.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yes. When you come from a place of service and you completely detach, that's where the magic happens. And I think, I don't know, let me know your perspective on this, but I noticed that a lot of people are just solely focused on transactions. They're focused on transactional experiences and not transformational experiences. Like, and if you want to be successful, especially in the online space, like you're not seeing people face to face like you are in a brick and mortar. So if you are at the point where you're struggling, like you're afraid to have conversations with people, you're not going to get very far because clients are literally the basis of your business growing and you making money.
And I think like something like even a part of that is like, I think for the most part, especially women, they don't like to be they don't like to be transactional, like on the outward side, but also on the inward side. If you're working with women, like, I'm sure anyone listening to this podcast was never like, oh my God, they slid in my DM and said, hey, you want to buy my stuff? And I was like, oh yeah, like absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, it's a numbers game, right? For some people, I know this is a lot with like men and masculine marketing, but that's not to say women don't do it. But it seems like when someone does something like that, it just becomes a numbers game and it takes the person out of it. And it's like, for me, I want to recognize that person because I want to know who I'm working with, like especially on a close, intimate relationship. And two, I would never expect someone to invest the amount of my coaching in me that I just like was like, hey, you want to buy my program? Like, that's just weird to me, right? Like, I got to know you first because I'm not trying to issue a bunch of refunds. I've yet to issue a refund in my business. So to me, I'm like, I need to know you. I need to like almost make sure that we're going to be a good fit so that you're not disappointed, I'm not disappointed. So again, it's going back to like setting those expectations up front.
Yeah, for sure. And I know one of the other things that you talked about was kind of like building authority too, which kind of plays on the whole relationship thing. And are you still in Clubhouse all the time? Because I knew you used to be on there like literally every day.
Oh my God, no, I wish, but it got too salesy for me. Back to my transactional. It got too salesy and I was like, I
Oh,
don't really like that.
really? I haven't been in there and like I don't think I've been in there at all this year, honestly.
Me
But
either.
that's interesting.
I stopped liking it when it started to be like that because I'm like, everyone always had something to sell. Every room I was in, they had something to sell. I'm like, this isn't fun anymore. It was fun when we gave value. And you come to my Instagram and buy something if you want. But when every single conversation was just leading to someone selling something, it just wasn't fun, you know?
Hmm. It's like just nonstop master classes,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. But like also buy my stuff. And I was like, this is not for me. Like, I like to have fun with it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's why I enjoyed it in the very beginning, personally. But I want to talk a little bit about like what would you say to somebody who like say they're in the same position that you were like all those years ago when you were like in your 9 to 5 job? Well, that wasn't even that long ago. That was like what, 2 years, 3 years ago, something like
Oh, it
that.
was like a year and a half.
Uh, I'm like all those years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Last June.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Oh wow. That's what is time.
I
But
know.
anyway, if somebody is in that space right now, I would just want to talk about that a little bit. Like, what advice would you give to them? Like, somebody comes from a bad background, they shouldn't have been successful, they think that they're like stuck, for lack of a better term, in this life that they have. What like feedback or encouragement would you give to them?
So I think I'm going to say something like super unpopular opinion is that I don't think that like one, I don't think entrepreneurship is for everyone. Like, let's just call it what it is. And the other part of that is I don't think like you being in a 9 to 5 and starting and or running your business is a bad thing. I think a lot of people put emphasis on like quitting your 9 to 5 and how important it is to quit your 9 to 5 and just jump and take risks. Some people have families. They can't do that. Like, let's just be honest. You know, we're not
I'm I just want to say that
19.
I'm really glad that you brought that up because I'm so sick of people
Yeah.
saying like just quit your job, Don't feed your family,
No.
live off of ramen, and go for your
Yeah.
dreams. Like that's not realistic for everybody. So thank you for saying that,
Right.
first
Live
of all.
out of your car with your dog and your 3 kids. Like it's just not
Right.
realistic,
That's
right?
not like
Like
the quote unquote van life you see.
no, that's not the
Totally different.
vibes. So what I think is like what I do think is important is that you're able to do that. Like there has to be a balance, right? So for me, I like to use when I was in my 9 to 5 as like an angel investor. So if there's something I wanted to buy, or there's a program I wanted to invest in, I was able to make that money through my 9 to 5. I'm like, oh, I can invest now, right? It was just extra money as I built my business. So for me, I would like to like the way that I see it is you don't have to like I would not fall into that pressure of like, oh my God, I'm not successful if I have a 9 to 5. You can do both. I know plenty of people that build 6-figure businesses with a 9 to 5. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think it has to be like the end all be all, right? Especially if you like it. So for me, it's like find what it is that you really like and what really is going to make you excited and go for that. But there's nothing wrong with building them both at the same time. I think it's just like it's having that discipline. Because if you honestly, what I think is if you really want it, you'll work towards it. It doesn't mean you have to quit your 9 to 5 tomorrow. I just think that maybe sometimes it's shitty, right? It's shitty to have to work from 6 to 9 p.m. when you worked all day, or it's shitty to have to write a piece of content to post on your lunch break, but it's like at what cost? Like, what do you want more? And when you keep building it up and keep building it up, I mean, I did coaching calls in my car on my lunch break, like I have no fear. Like I would host courses in Starbucks being like, okay, well, the time is 12 to 1, this is what time it is. Like, I can't, this is it, but I think when you may sacrifice certain things, but in the long run, it usually ends up being worth it as long as you're staying consistent with it. And you're also knowing that you are, like you said, coming from that place of service because people feel that energy.
Yeah, totally. And I'm so glad that you talked about using the money that you're making in your 9 to 5 to invest in your business because I did the same thing. I was working in my business. I think I can never remember years correctly, which is so bad, but it was like 2 or 3 years that I was running my business while working in my 9 to 5. I think it was 2 years. I don't know, something like that. Um, but I did exactly what you're saying. Like all of the coaching, the courses, all of the programs that I invested in, I literally used money from my 9 to 5 to fund that in the beginning stages because I knew that once I left that 9 to 5 job, like I was done, right? Like you don't have anything to fall back on. And I know that people say like burn the boats, go all in, but also you have to be a little bit realistic too with like your situation, if you have a family, if you have a mortgage to pay. So like I said before, I always suggest like doing both at the same time until you have, I don't know, like 3 to 6 months worth of savings. Maybe that looks different for you, but like some kind of nest egg so that you don't feel a ton of pressure after you do leave your 9 to 5.
Well, I think too, like to go off of that is like that you don't want to come from a place of scarcity either, because then that goes back to transactional, right? Is
Right.
if I don't have money in my savings account to feel confident for, maybe I want to make an investment, or maybe it's also paying my bills for the next 6 months. If I don't feel confident in that, a lot of people will fall into like, I have to make this next sale. I have to do this, right? So you get stuck in this cycle and it becomes almost again transactional and not exciting, and then you're just leading yourself to burnout. So in my mind, it's like you want to be comfortable so you can sell and create things from a place of abundance instead of sitting there day in and day out where you're like, where's my next dollar going to come from, where's my next sale, right? Because then you start to get in that mindset and it's like that doesn't feel good either.
Oh my gosh, I can totally relate to that because I was in that mindset for a second. And like 1 month we had to use, like I had this old gift card from Target and I had to use that to literally pay for our groceries because I was so stuck in that scarcity mentality for such a long freaking time. And it is difficult to get out of, but I mean, in all reality, like if you want to be successful, you cannot live in that scarcity mindset. It's just not possible.
Yeah, because when you're stuck thinking of like, where's the next sale going to come from, you really like what it does for you just in general, like your audience, all of it, they feel that. Like the
Yeah.
people in your DMs feel that. The people, if you're doing a story, if you're doing content, like it just looks like it's desperation. And if any of you have ever gone on dates, you know what it's like when someone's so desperate to have you. You know what I mean? You're not attracted to that.
Oh, that's such a good example. And I just had a couple of different past experiences pop up in my mind, which was like, oh, so funny. Like people like literally begging you to like
Yes.
go out on another date, and you're like, this is not gonna work. Sorry.
But you're so turned off, right? Like I think it's the same thing when you're selling something. It's like if someone just basically begging me to join their program, I'm like, well, your confidence level is not that high. So now I'm just like instantly turned off and I don't even want this anymore.
Right, exactly. But I do think that there's a difference between like it's a fine line between like begging people to join versus like sharing the benefits of joining. And I think people like sometimes blur the line between those. Like I feel like some people just like vomit everything out that's in the program without like giving the person a second to think about it. But also that comes from that like lack and scarcity mentality, right? Like they feel like they have to do that to make it sound worth it to the other person, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's like it's getting through like that fear too, right? I think like exactly like what you were saying is when we're sitting there going, okay, you need this, that's a different vibe than if I come approach it and I'm like, what's coming up for you? Because for me, I'm going to challenge some fear, but I'm not going to tell you, like you said, here's like 50 more things you get when you join this program, right? You get 12 weeks, you get this many calls, you get this, and this is, oh, and I'll throw in some templates, and this is why it's this price, right? Versus if I'm just like, this is what it is. And if some fear is coming up, like I'll work through that with someone. And that's a little bit different than legit I can't do it and now you're begging them. So it's two different places. Like you said, there is definitely a fine line, but it's like at what cost, and can you read that? Like can you read into it to see like is that actually an excuse or is it just someone that can't do it?
Yeah, and I think that comes with time and experience, honestly, with understanding the difference. But you can tell when somebody just literally can't do it. And if you are talking to somebody, just stop. Like, don't, because you look dumb. Like, to be
Yes.
totally honest.
I'm like, I will nurture them from afar, and that's okay if they can't like do it right now, or maybe it's the program, or maybe it's a time. But I also think something that people end up doing is they just dismiss it. And like, I don't want to dismiss them forever because if they're interested in me and they really wanted to buy something, right? And it's like, and this coaches have done this to me before where I just wasn't ready for that program, or maybe I was in a different program, or maybe I just didn't have the funds, especially when I started, and they just dismissed me versus someone that continued to like nurture me. It doesn't need to be every day, but nurtured me and then maybe had a different program that was a little bit smaller. I still wanted to work with them, right? And I still purchased from them because they had these programs for me that I can now get into versus someone that just says, oh, well, she can't afford it, to check her off the list. And now I can't, now I'm never going to work with you, right? Because you made me feel like that. So it's all about how you make them feel at the end of the day.
For sure. It's again, it goes back to the relationships and treating people like humans. What a concept.
Yes.
Like, I don't know why people forget that. Like, yes, you're hiding or you're not hiding, but like, yes, you're sitting behind a keyboard or a phone, but that doesn't mean that you can forget that there's a human on the other side of the screen, right? And I think a lot of people do, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think it's what makes like selling and sales like either easy or not at the end of the day. Like I think it comes down to like your confidence and also how you treat someone and like the recognition you give or don't give them. Like I think especially with women, right? A lot of women buy based on emotion and they want to feel like they're heard, they're seen, they're recognized. They want to know that this is a good decision and it's an empowered decision for them, not just I'm buying this because I have to. And then they sit with that buyer's remorse. And unfortunately, then that's when you end up having either nightmare clients or refunding people.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, I've been down that path before with nightmare clients, and that's never fun. So, um, but again, it came from scarcity mentality. But anyway, before we wrap up, I don't know if you have any stories that you can share, but if you do, I would love for you to share like maybe like one or two stories that you remember from your childhood that have now defined you as the person that you are today. And I know that's a big ask, so I don't know if anything is coming up top of mind for you, but do you have anything that you want to share?
That was a good one. I think for me, it just going back to what everyone said would make you like successful, what everyone said would make you think that you were gonna like do it. If you think about school, right? This is something I think of all the time. So you go back and think about school, or you think about everyone, your counselors, your teachers, your mom, your dad, all they want to do is ask you what it is that you want to do for the rest of your life. I don't know what boyfriend I want right now, like I can't pick this, I'm 17. What do you mean? So they ask you so early. And I think a lot of emphasis, and something that it comes back to, like, even I think like as I'm older in my career, is everything people ask is what do they do? You ever notice that when someone meets someone, it's like, oh, what does your husband do? Right?
Oh my
It's
gosh,
like,
all the time. And at this point, I'm just like, it's so hard to explain what I do to people who don't understand the
yeah,
online world. I'm like, marketing, business coach,
yeah.
like, and that I just kind of leave it at that, and it's good enough the majority of the time.
But I think like even taking that back now, like when I think back to my childhood, it's like taking that back now, it's no one ever asked me what would make me happy, right? And this is something that I think of now, is like, even when, and something I want people to take away from listening to this, is when you meet someone and they're talking to you about like a man, or like, I don't care if you're going on a dating site, your friends going on a dating site, and they're like, oh, I met this guy Josh, and the first question you say is, what does he do? It is nothing like, what does it matter? Like, I think obviously, yes, it's important. Do I want to have a job and not sleep on a couch? Sure. But in the other end of it, I just think I always go back to thinking of like, is he happy? Is what he's doing making him happy? That's what's important to me. Because I think so many times people get burnt out and hate their job and just do this like every day. Like I said, it's like a cycle of like, wake up, do this, go eat, and then go to bed and go repeat, right? So for me, it's like taking that back from childhood. I wish someone would have just said like, what would make you happy? And I think that's something I bring in now into my adulthood, is like you think about even like skilled trades, right? There's no, they almost are like not looked down upon, but it's like, he's a plumber. Okay, something breaks in your house, you're going to want that plumber, right? Like, is he happy? Does he enjoy it? Like, what are those things? And I think that so many people put so much emphasis on schooling, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Obviously, we need it for a lot of professions, and I think it's really good for future education. But I just wish that someone would have asked me like, what is it that you want to do that's going to make you excited, like happy? And to me, that's more important than I want to make six figures and just be in routine, right? So
Mhm.
that's something that I think I took from my childhood really early on, is like watching my parents be so unhappy. It's like, what would make me happy? And this was it. Even if it was risk taking, right? It was risky, but for me, it was like, when you had nothing to lose. Like,
Mhm.
you take risk because you didn't have, there's nowhere to go when you're down. There's no below, so
Nowhere to
I
go but
think,
up, right?
yeah, so I think it's like coming back to like, what actually is going to bring that happiness to you, and like lean into that versus just doing whatever someone else says, or whatever expectation society, your parents, whatever, put on you. And a lot of times, and to be honest with you, your family and your friends just aren't going to understand what you do, and that's okay. Like, don't that's fine. My mom still doesn't understand what I do. I haven't been working in my job for over a year. Mom's like, you sell fitness? No, I didn't. No, I'm kidding. She doesn't do that. But some of my friends do. They're like, oh, you sell fitness packages? I'm like, no, I've been not doing that for like 4 years now. Come on. But I think at the end of the day, it's just like whatever it is that is going to bring that joy to you, because that to me is more important than bringing home, if I was working a 9 to 5, bringing home 70K, doing what I actually like to do. You see how much more money that will actually make you when you're excited about it.
Oh my gosh, yes. And we talked about detachment earlier, but like also detaching from expectations that society has, that your friends and family have, because nobody in my family understands what I do. They think I build websites. I'm like, I haven't done that for 5 years. Why would you think I'm still building websites?
Well,
Um,
that too. I like bringing that back from childhood too. Is like, you think about, you get so much judgment placed on you from such a young age. I mean, you're placing it on yourself, and other people are placing it on you as well. Like, I mean, friends, family, all of it. And to me now, like as an adult, I honestly like, for what? No, I don't care what Julie from high school has to say, right? Like, she doesn't pay my bills. She doesn't live in my brain. She doesn't live my life every day. And like, I think a lot of people are scared to either start or pursue their dreams because they're so worried about what someone else is going to think or say. And I just think that like none of that matters. And why do people let it affect them so much? Because they're not you. Like you have a family to provide for. You have, maybe you have a spouse, maybe you have kids, and like for you, that's probably immediately what matters. And releasing that, like you said, releasing that judgment of what anyone, I mean, what your cousin Terry thinks or your friend. Like I said, that doesn't matter because it happened to me when I first started this. And I know some of my friends were super judgmental, which are the first ones that are asking me if I can help them build their business or if I can give them a job. And I'm like, yeah, you remember when you judged me when I first started,
Yeah,
like, it's fine. Everything's fine.
for sure. Yeah. And I wanted to go back to the point that you said about the happiness too, like just being happy with what you're doing, because one thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you're happy and you're actually doing what you enjoy doing, you're going to make way more money with it too. Well, those first couple of years be a little bit more difficult to figure out how like the business journey work, sure. But like think about the return that that's going to have on the rest of your life when you can actually like work 20 hours a week or whatever it is. You can actually go to the gym at 11 o'clock in the morning if that's what you want to do, right? It's all about that freedom. And that's something that a lot of people don't think about. But also something that we're doing with our son at a very early age is like giving him, obviously not like total freedom because that would be complete chaos, but like more freedom and not really setting expectations for him for what he wants to do. Like our my mom is already starting like this college fund for him. I was like, well, I can't promise that it's going to be used for college. If he wants to be an entrepreneur, start his own business when he's 18, I'm going to let him do it. Like he can do whatever he wants to do. He's his own person, right? And I don't think there's enough of that personally.
Yeah, and I mean, you know what? He will learn. And if he like
Exactly.
fails, I say this in quotes, if he fails at something, he will learn a lot from it. And maybe the next thing it will make him even more successful at, right? Like
Yep.
it's not like it may be a setback. That's what I like to see it as. It might set him back, but that's okay. Maybe set him back for a year and then he finds what he really likes to do, right? There's
Mhm.
no and like I was saying earlier, even with the skilled trade, like maybe he wants to go and like start his own landscape business. There's nothing wrong with it. Like
Shoot, I hope he
maybe
does.
have a
He can
little
do my landscaping because I hate it. I hate
yes,
doing it.
same. Send them here.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I think of that too as like so many people. I think in corporate are they look down upon skilled trades, and I'm like, you need these people. What happened during the pandemic? You needed these people.
For sure. Yeah. I've never understood the dynamics of that. But also like all of the people who do go to college and then they don't use their degrees for anything. Like my degree, I have an art degree because I got a degree in graphic design. Like I'm not even using that right now. So you're spending the other
Yeah,
thing, I just want to talk about this for like a very brief second, is like people they're totally fine with spending like 100,000 plus dollars on a college degree, but when it comes to starting a business, it's like, whoa, I can't spend like $3,000 to get started or whatever the number
yeah.
is, right? So
I'm
that
like
I just
that's
want to
one
throw that.
semester plus alcohol.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Maybe even more. Like the school that I went to was very expensive. It was like 30 grand a year or some, maybe 35. I don't know. That was without room and board because I lived at home. But it was crazy expensive. And I'm so grateful that I had my mom to actually pay for that. I'm one of those kids. But, I'm so grateful for that. But also, like, I don't use it for anything now. Sorry, mom, if you're listening to this. I don't want you to think you wasted your money. Um,
But you did.
but
No, I'm
yeah,
kidding.
I know. But I did. Sorry. Glad you
Oh,
worked
it's all
hard
right.
for
I'm
me.
still paying student loans back, so life's good. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we still have my husband's student loans too, which hopefully they'll be paid off sooner rather than later. But that's the other part of it, like coming out, maybe getting a job that you like, and then it's like, then you have all of these student loans on top of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have lots of thoughts about college, which we don't have to go into right now. But do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with everybody before we wrap up?
I just think like all for everyone that's listening, like I really think it's just like releasing those expectations in all aspects of life. And like I said, like whether it be like your high school friends, your family, whatever, and also releasing expectations of people going to work with you or not going to work with you. Like release those expectations of like when you put yourself out there and just come from, like you said, stuff is like a place of service, it will happen. When you take those expectations out, just watch how much will actually change.
Mhm. Yep, that's an amazing note to end on. So thank you again for being here, Nina. You're amazing. I love you. And where can people find you? Is Instagram the best place? I'm
Oh my
assuming.
God, thanks for having me. And yes, Instagram at the real coach Nina, like Steph said. You got, if for those of you that obviously don't know me, just come in my DMs, talk some crap to me. I like it. I'm fine with it. Like every time I do any kind of training, like please just talk some crap to me in the DMs. I will not sell you. It's fine. Just talk to me.
Go send her a DM and say, I heard you on Behind Their Business and you sucked.
Yeah.
Just see what she says.
And if you send me a picture of an opossum, I'll just be like so happy.
Yeah, I don't understand your obsession with those. They're so creepy.
They're so
Ugh.
cute.
No, I don't think so. Anyway, thank you again for being here.
All right. Thanks for having me.